problem.
Hi, Todd. What was your favorite piece of advice that you received from Carrie?
Well, Carrie told me not to marry my first wife, and of course I didn't listen to her, and I regretted that, not taking that advice, because she was absolutely correct. Both my mother and Carrie knew right away that this girl was not the girl for me. And I actually wrote in my book, the chapter about this was called "The Wrong Girl." But the advice coming from Carrie and my mom was that it was the wrong girl. You know, Carrie was never very good at picking out her own partners. Neither was my mother. You know, my mother had bad luck with husbands. Carrie had bad luck with husbands and boyfriends and things. I mean, not that she didn't choose some interesting people, but it was a lot easier for her to look at me and see what was better for me. There's some really cool things on the internet that I've seen, some talk shows and stuff where Carrie and I are together, and you can really see the connection there between us. It was very special, and she's not replaceable on any level, but the magic of all the things that were left behind are still with us. And so to act on the words and to be able to see all the great things that she created and read the things that she wrote. I have a lot of stuff that she wrote that never made it into books that's astounding. I mean, some of the poetry and things she wrote in her diaries as a young teenager and on is amazing stuff. I think that her bipolar disorder, as much as it was considered by society as a handicap, was also an amazing gift. It's what made her see things the way she saw things. So it was yes, it was a handicap, but it was also an amazing gift. And because of that gift, we were left with these unbelievable creations, these amazing words. I don't know anybody that has more quotes than Carrie, other than maybe Winston Churchill or something. I mean, it's off the charts. I mean, she's just constant. Almost everything that came out of her mouth was a quote. I remember one time I was sitting at a table with her and Joni Mitchell, and Carrie was talking, and Joni Mitchell takes out a napkin and a pen and says to Carrie, "Can I write this down?" And Carrie looked at her like, "What?" I mean, it was that, but that shows you if Joni Mitchell wants to write down what you're saying, for her next song, you can imagine that you're just a machine of amazing depth and inspiration for all of us.
Hi, Todd. My name is Stacy from the Fulcrum base here in Kentucky. And my question that I wanted to ask is, what is your most favorite or memorable joke or prank that Carrie ever pulled on you?
Well, the story that comes to mind instantly is we were traveling together. We had been overseas in China, and we were coming back through the customs, and we had our Christmas presents that we had purchased while we were in China and Singapore and different places. This is back in the early 80s. So the customs people wanted to know what was in these packages, and Carrie said, "These are gifts for our family," or whatever. And the lady we were dealing with was really being kind of tough. And she said, "Well, open up one of the packages." And she pushes it towards Carrie. And Carrie, being Princess Leia, of course, threw the package right back at her and said, "You open it up." And so I could see right away we were about to head into the back room for the deep cavity search. And Carrie's not backing down because she's Princess Leia, right? Oh, wait a minute. That doesn't have any standing at the customs office in Honolulu? I forgot. So needless to say, I had to step in and intervene and get her to calm down. And I got her boss, and we kind of got out of trouble, shall we speak. But Carrie was definitely in this lady's face. So whether that was a prank or not, that was the thing that had me, shall we say, I was this far away from the deep cavity search, and I wasn't looking forward to it. But we did avoid it in the end, and we happily were able to deliver the Christmas presents to all of our friends without further incident. And we did pay our dues, the customs dues.
Hi, Todd. This is Rachel from Kessel Base in Oklahoma. Apart from her role as Princess Leia, what do you think Carrie would most want to be remembered for?
Well, she later on in life decided to start doing some of the Comic-Con shows and things. And initially she never did any of those. And then one day she decided to do some of those, and she reconnected or connected really for the first time with her fans. And so that connection made her realize that she and Princess Leia were one. They're inseparable. And people were coming to see her. And yes, they're putting the Star Wars picture and all that in front of her. But there really was no difference between the character in the movie and Carrie. None. I mean, obviously there's a situation that is a fantasy, but everything that's happening, the way she's facing things, is very much Carrie. So, you know, she's going to want to be remembered for that, you know, for being that person that inspired and connected back to her fans. And that is, I think, her favorite, you know, like, what's her favorite role? In the end, it's got to be that. It's not that you couldn't say I loved her in the Blues Brothers or Harry Met Sally or something, but there will never be another Princess Leia, not like her.
Hi Todd, I'm Amy from Endor Base of Northern California. I troop as General Leia to honor Carrie. She's also a terrific role model for us mature women and younger women to aspire to. I'm also 5'1" like Carrie. All my life I've had to experience people not taking me seriously, calling me kiddo, stuff like that, because of my height. So I would really like to know, how did Carrie deal with these kind of hassles?
That's a fantastic question. But I'm going to have to take you back in time a little bit to answer it properly. My mother was also 5'1" and ish. And that they used to exaggerate a little bit on their height, but my mother was very small as well. My mother wanted to play a part in this movie called The Unsinkable Molly Brown. The director, Charles Walters, did not want her for this part. He wanted Shirley MacLaine or somebody else. And when asked why, he told others that she was too small for the part. So my mother was very insulted, you know, by the notion of being told that she was, you know, too small for the part. But rather than face this the typical way, my mother went and saw the director and set him up so that he would actually say that to her. So the director said to my mother, "Well, Debbie, you know, you're too small for the part." And she said back, "Well, how small is the part?" So they never faced that issue the way you typically would. As the old expression goes, dynamite comes in very small packages. And boy, would that be true of my mother and sister. So size has nothing to do with it. I'm not a very big person either. I'm 5'8". So for a man, that's not very big. So I'm on the smaller side myself. But I've never been set back by my height. I've always had a very big mouth. So my whole family does. So, you know, whatever you lack in stature, you can make up for in attitude. And I would say that's Carrie. When she steps up into Darth Vader and she says, "I recognize that foul stench anywhere," and she steps up into his face. I mean, that's the attitude that you should have in life. If somebody is giving you a hard time because of your height or your size, you just let them know how big you actually are with your mouth and your attitude. And you do it gracefully, though, always with grace, always with dignity, but never hold back on attitude. I mean, is that Carrie or what?
Hi, Todd. This is Diana Patro from Elam Base in Minnesota. What was the silliest thing Carrie ever did when you were kids?
You could never pin down one thing as far as the silliest thing that Carrie ever did, because it was a constant stream of silliness. I think that she lived to one up the silliness. My mother actually had to institute rules at the dining room table, for an example, that were designed to control Carrie's silliness, such as, and I don't know how many at home have a similar rule like this, but there's no singing at the dinner table rule had to be instituted because Carrie would sing. My mother wouldn't have a traditional family dialogue at the table. Carrie would sing. She was always trying to do pranks and outdo one another. One of her favorite things to do was Christmas time. She was one of the most intuitive givers on earth. She used to love to figure out what was the perfect gift for somebody and then seek out that gift. And she would rather give out her gifts than she would receive the gifts. So she spent her whole time being Santa Claus and distributing. But I mean, I mean, as far as causing trouble, she never really caused trouble. These were more like your typical prankster things, like, taking the Rolls Royce out for a drive when you're 14. I mean, that's something everybody does. They did a lot of that. They figured out how to, Carrie and her friends, of course, used to eat out at restaurants a lot. So there was a lot of phone calls from the restaurant with the kids, underage drinking and things like this. But to me, by today's standards, all this is child's play, so to speak. But she had actually a relatively normal childhood. I know that's hard to imagine. By celebrity standards, it was fairly normal. My mother went to great efforts to keep our life as normal as it could be. We did travel with my mother on the set, and this exposed Carrie, obviously, to the industry very early on. And she knew really early on that this is what she wanted to do. But, she was very professional on the set. So there were some pranks, but nothing too outlandish, So I would say when you really consider it, she was pretty calm and controlled when you consider what she could have done.
Hello, Todd. This is Caitlin from Alphabase. What is one thing that Star Wars fans can do to most honor Carrie's memory?
Well, Carrie loved people that were outspoken. She loved people that stood up for their principles, whatever they may be. Carrie was a mixed bag of politics. Typically, a lot of people considered her to be very liberal, but she had a lot of other viewpoints as well. But she was a strong person that believed in social consciousness and believed in justice. One thing that people don't understand is my mother was very patriotic and raised Carrie and I to be very patriotic. So Carrie's very, very patriotic within the mix of all the things that are going on. So there was a very strong sense of country and in her belief system. So she lived her life in a way to help other people's when she could. You notice how much stuff that she did without even knowing she was doing it that inspired others. So I would just say, for me, I just try to keep Carrie's what she accomplished. I try to keep that in mind. And whenever I am faced with adversity, I always think Carrie would just walk right through this. She ran to the roar of the lion, always. And when she was faced with impossible things, she always thought back on my mother overcoming her things, and she would just pull her bootstraps up and push through. So if you want to follow what Carrie would do, don't let anybody ever get you down, and just run to the roar.